Welcome, everyone, to District 31 Club Close-Up. For all Toastmasters, or maybe not Toastmasters, that want to find out a little more, you've come to the right place. This is a video interview series where I interview clubs from around District 31. We learn about the club, great things they're doing, how they're engaging their members, and how they're recruiting new ones. I'm your host, Christian Austin. I'm the 2023-2024 Public Relations Manager for District 31. And in today's episode, we are going to be interviewing Christina Mello with Toastmasters in Motion. Toastmasters in Motion is a corporate club in Raynham, Massachusetts. They are part of the Johnson & Johnson MedTech division. And I'll note, this is the first club we've interviewed that's a corporate club. All the other clubs have been community clubs that have been open to anyone who wants to join. In a corporate club, it's only open to members of the corporation itself. I'll be saying more about the club at the very end, and for employees of the club, how you can join the club and enjoy the club meetings, which they meet on every Tuesday. But let's talk a little about the club and their achievements. They achieved presidential distinguished status last year. Christina, congratulations for that. Many clubs don't attain any distinguished status at all, and this was 9 out of 10 possible distinguished club program points that your club earned last year. Quite an accomplishment, and a corporate club as well. So we'll dive into some questions about how a corporate club is able to achieve that level of performance during the year, during the interview. The club was founded in 2011, so over 10 years old already. It's an in-person club, and as I mentioned, it's a corporate club that meets in Raynham, Massachusetts. I hope everyone's ready to take some notes, though. We're going to learn some great things from Christina today about what her club's doing. But before we start, I'd like to pass it to you, Christina. Can you tell us a little about yourself and your role in the club?
I will. Thank you, Christian. I am Christina Mello. I am an employee from Johnson & Johnson for 13 years. Started out with various companies within the Johnson & Johnson MedTech orthopedic side of our business. Through time, always been within contract management positions, and really enjoy just the level of camaraderie and how focused we are on DE&I initiatives. So it's a really excellent company to work for. I've been a member of the Toastmasters in Motion group for 9 years here, and it's just been a wonderful journey. I have had various other officer positions besides president. I am entering my 2nd term as president. I have been secretary previously for a few terms, and also as VP of Public Relations for a few terms. So I think I'm making my way around the executive club roles within our group, and it has just been, a wonderful experience, and has definitely helped me in my career progression.
That, Christina. And Christina, unfortunately, many people are on vacation, but given that background that Christina has, well-rounded across all of the officer roles, or I shouldn't say all of them, a lot of the officer roles, she'll be able to provide a lot of insight into what the club is doing and what each of the officers in the club are doing as well. I'd also like to mention, I see in Christina's biography, she's won some Triple Crown, she's won a Pathfinder as well. So a well-accomplished Toastmaster, not only just a leader of a club. Christina, I'd like to get into the question, just an overall question about the club. It's a Johnson & Johnson corporate club, but the club is called Toastmasters in Motion. I'm wondering, where did that name come from?
So that name came from back when it originally was founded. A lot of the individuals were from like engineering and R&D groups. And our mantra as an orthopedics company, especially at that time, our motto, our logo, our motto for the company was people in motion, because we want to keep people moving. We want to keep people healthy and patients healthy, and providing them with the best healthcare that we can as an orthopedics company. So with that, people in motion, went through the whole people movement, moving with people. And at that time, when they were thinking of the name for the club, the In Motion just really was a no-brainer. So, and we want to always have people moving in their career development and professional development. That's why that name got adopted for us.
Great. Provided some insight. I was wondering when I saw that, right? We're taking the physical motion and we're talking about the motion in people's personal development as well by being part of the Toastmasters Club. Very creative name. I like it. Next, I'd like to ask you, how would you describe Toastmasters in motion? Is there an aspect of the club that other clubs may not be doing that you feel adds particular value to your club?
I can say most definitely yes, just because also I have attended other clubs, community clubs or corporate club meetings in the past. Most of the time it's usually that crunch at the end to get, to reach the Pathfinder awards and making sure I'm doing all my speeches. But one of the things that we hear as feedback is that we're pretty well organized. And we are. I mean, we've also been around for 13 years, so we have it down packed. But of course, it's, the mentoring and the communication between our officers team, which is also really key in making us flow that way. So, I mean, we do our best we can within what we can. Of course, being a corporate club, the one thing is too, is if you're at work and all of a sudden you have another meeting come on top of our regular meeting, your career comes first, your position comes first. But usually there's enough of us around that we can back each other up. So I would say kind of like our organization, our discipline, and even in now a hybrid sense, we try to keep a lot of the Toastmaster traditions alive within our group. So that's been a big part of, who we are foundationally and what we've continued to continue to offer our membership.
Thanks for sharing that, Christina. And you mentioned hybrid meetings, keeping them organized even in that setting as well. When did you decide to go hybrid from virtual, or maybe you didn't go virtual at all during COVID?
Mm-hmm. So it definitely was COVID generated. We originally were only an on-site group. We would be all here in person. Our meetings are weekly, every Tuesdays, lunchtime. So we would all bring in our lunches and getting everything prepared. During the pandemic, when COVID hit, we definitely were missing, the aspect of it. And within a few months, I think we decided, what, let's just do is virtual. The one thing that, we're very fortunate, even more so as a corporate club, is that we have so many technology pieces in our hands. So going virtual with our meetings during the whole pandemic time was a very easy transition. Other than, trying to figure out how to do the handshakes to cross over and transfer the podium. It was little challenges, like I think like every club did, but we already had the technology in place. I myself, in my position, I was doing hybrid work schedule already for years prior to that. So it wasn't that far off for us, but it was an easy transition. As we got into the pandemic and more of us started slowly coming back to the office, it was still sporadic and also in different days. So not everybody would come in on the Tuesdays that we had our meeting. So we saw a need there. We saw the need to keep hybrid. And in addition, because of that, we were able to outreach to other individuals who are not part of this campus, who either maybe their position is completely remote the entire time, or that they're not even from this area. And we were able to obtain quite a few great members, all-encompassing members within roles, to become part of our team, part of our membership. And the hybrid option is the only way to keep. If we ended up turning back to only in person, we wouldn't be as successful. So hence the hybrid option. And now, we're maintaining it, and it looks like it's going to be here to stay.
Thanks for sharing that, Christina. Great point about hybrid. We were all virtual for a while there. Corporations do have an advantage. They have IT infrastructure set up. Maybe the culture was already used to doing hybrid meetings. And you made a great point. Satellite campuses now, you gain members from them. You continue to have that hybrid option so they can join virtually, but then the members who still want to meet in person, they're able to do that as well. I'd like to focus now on leadership, Christina, and in particular, how were you recruited? We heard in the beginning you took on several officer roles. So your experience, and then how do you identify future club leaders in your club?
So as far for myself, I think it's the what I've heard in like peer sessions and other conferences. We're kind of voluntold to do a position. I was only with Toastmasters, I think, for a year before someone said, well, I think you're really good with the public relations piece. Can you help us out? And slowly that ends up intertwining of, oh, it's, May, and now we have nominations coming up. And the ideas started coming up that when we asked Christina to do the PR role, and honestly, it just evolved from that type of process. Having the year under my belt was helpful, but it was a time that, we were also struggling to trying to find a few other members. Some of the founding members were no longer joining us anymore, feeling like they were capped, in the Toastmasters. So we needed kind of like fresh meat, so to speak, to get everything going again and just getting some fresh ideas. So that's how I myself was recruited. I'd like to think over the time that we've tried to do it a little bit more methodical in, recognizing certain skills and talents within our membership as, are partaking in meeting roles, how they participate in table topic, and just their eagerness to learn a little bit more about it. So that is how we really approach everybody to lean really like our officers, our club officers, and we'll have that communication, especially just as the new year, a new year starts. We'll start having those communications saying, hey, Sarah looked pretty good. She was really interested. I really think she'd be, a good secretary or sergeant in arms. And you kind of develop that relationship with some of those people. We'll keep in touch with them and kind of put the bug in their ear for a little bit. But ultimately, one of the officers, ends up tying them down one day after a meeting or before or otherwise and says, have you considered taking on this role? Just a little bit more about it. And kind of having that relationship, to get them interested and then, hopefully hook, line, and sinker.
Thanks. And the word voluntold, we hear that a lot in Toastmasters. For everyone watching, don't think this is a negative thing. Being an executive is a great opportunity. If you do something really well in the club, you can service your club. As Christina said, she was good at public relations. The club members saw something in her and asked her if she could serve as a public relations manager doing what she's doing as a club member. So look out for those club members, as Christina said. Are they engaged? Do they have a particular skill they do really well? They could serve on your executive committee and be a great, great addition. Christina, also talking about the executive committee, each club officer, they have a different role on the executive committee. How does your club delegate tasks to club officers?
Well, we try to maintain a constant communication with our officers. We do our best to have a monthly meeting. It's on the calendar, typically, hopefully recurring at the same time, so it's top of mind. And we always come up with kind of like an action plan. And a lot of it is I'll generate it, try to send the agenda out 24 hours in advance. So each officer can already pre-plan what they say, or if they're not able to attend, they're able to give me an update on some of those goals. So that's why when we have that, we kind of have that action list going on. But we're part of all the same IT infrastructure. So we have the ability to have like group chats. So I have we have a separate group chat just for our club executive committee. We have one just aside for membership. And there's another that has our membership plus full distribution list of potential guests to attend. So we can, communicate things a little deeper, and it really all relies on, our own tracking. Most of it, I feel that definitely as president, like up to me or like our secretary to follow up with some things and just say, hey, we said 2 weeks ago during our meeting, you were going to follow up with, number of people who need the level 3 completed. How, and how you doing with that? Have you had any luck? So it's the little things. And again, it helps that we use Microsoft Teams to collaborate. So we're able to, use some of those features within those systems to, put on reminders, etc. So we can have follow through.
That is a good tip for anyone who has a chat application, whether it's Teams, Slacks, or something else, to set up those channels to communicate amongst the executive committee, general membership, or just the distribution list, as Christina said. And then the other point I noticed you said, Christina, is just following up on those items. When somebody says they're going to do something, it's not rude to go and ask them, hey, you said you were going to do this. Did you get it done? Just a little nudge. And maybe that's all they need. Maybe they were busy. Maybe they had something else to do. And to make sure that the things get done that you're expecting to get done within the club. Let's move on now to education. Looking at the club dashboard and the Distinguished Club program, Christina, 8 members completed 15 path levels last year. How are you encouraging members to do that? In particular, to give pathway speeches. Sometimes people will give unassigned speeches, but you are getting members to give pathway speeches. And then after they give that speech, to complete in base camp that pathways project so that the club gets credit for it.
So we're strong within our pathways program. We now have a new VP of education that just started this term. And of course, as soon as the term started, he went on paternity leave. So we have to kickstart yet a new program this year. But the last couple of years, we had the same VP education of every seasoned member, which was helpful. And honestly, we kept the distinguished club plan as a primary focus of how to understand who's at what level and how can we fulfill it. And that's something that we did review at our officers meeting. I would always pull up the DCP from the international website and follow along. We have reached President's Distinguished for the last 6 years in a row. So we're very proud of that. We had Select Distinguished for a few years, but beyond that, and even the last few years, we've gotten the Beat the Clock award. And some of it is, of course, having our members completing all of these is important for us to keep in touch with them. So a lot of that is just our one-on-one promotion of pathways. We found it helpful that when we have like new members come on, we found it very helpful that we review pathways kind of one-on-one, one of the officers will review with them, because it just really gives them a personalized approach to it. We can show them what our pathways look like, how to complete things in base camp. And everyone that does a speech within our group, it's always tied to a speech as part of a project. So that way there's no, extra speeches unless it's a task under like a level 5 that may be required. But ultimately, everything boils back to a specific level, a specific project within a specific path. And that way, everything kind of has that accountability to match to something. And then especially when someone's new, we remind them, hey, I know you just finished your level 2. Make sure to put it in there. Make sure to mark it. And we do recommend people trying to do it the levels in order, because otherwise doing the approvals in base camp and the DCP doesn't get updated properly, because you have to do them in order to, put the approval in both areas in the system. But ultimately, it's just the follow-up. It's the follow-up with individuals, and our pursuant action on the levels in the education program is what hopefully will drive it. And even new this year, we're going to try to do kind of more pathway 101 sessions during a meeting. So in lieu of like a table topics, or even we don't have a speaker, scheduled during one of our meetings, we'll take that time and say, hey, you know what, we're going to do a pathways review. Sorry, seasoned members, if you're bored about it, but we have 50% membership is all new within the last year. So we know definitely that there's opportunity to refresh, people from that initial.
That is a great utilization of meeting time with reviewing pathways. Sometimes even experienced members lose focus on what their future projects are, just to bring that up and have a discussion, especially for the new members. You said 50% new members, very important for them to understand the educational system. And then you also mentioned, Christina, having somebody just follow up and show them the rope, show them what Pathways is, show them what Basecamp is. Is that usually the VP of Education, a mentor, or who usually does that with your new members?
It could be a combination. Our VP of Education the last few years, as I said, he was very seasoned. So we did create a mentor program. The mentor program pretty much is about a 6-month run with people, especially you want to make sure those two individuals have like a good personality and traits and things line up. If something's not working, then we can switch it out. Having a group of 20 people always, especially the last year with 50%, is all new. There's only so many mentors, right, that can go around. And some people in the beginning, and they also feel that they don't want a mentor right away. They don't want to be labeled as a protege right away. They just want to ride out a little bit to see what Toastmasters is all about. So we don't push it, but typically the VPE, as we're checking monthly during our meetings, we'll see who's close or not. And now if we notice someone a little struggling, then either that VPE, myself, or any of the other officers will pretty much, just reach out to them and just say, hey, I know you haven't done speech in a little while. What's holding you up? Do you need a review? And those kind of communications start.
In reaching out and asking if they need a review, would that be the point where you would also ask them if they wanted to have a mentor to help them with that review? How would that typically work with ending up assigning somebody a mentor?
I typically would check in with my VPE because we consider that position a mentor chairperson for that subset. Unless it's a different person, the last few years, it's been the same individual. But it depends on the relationships that it's set. We typically, it's like October-ish is when we would start kind of within the new year, the new membership season of 6 months. But I try to ask the VPE every month for an update and saying, okay, I know, who do we have mentor relationship with? How are they going? Have you checked in with the protege? Have you checked in with the mentor? Have they even not met yet? Maybe we need to change up who the mentors are. Some people might end up being on a project now at work and they're saying, you know what, I can't focus on this right now. I need to take part in the future. So it just boils down to that consistent communication that I do rely on the VPE to do kind of like the digging behind it.
So the VP of E leading the mentor program, and then as you mentioned, communication between you and the VP of E and the VP of E and the mentors as well. If somebody is not achieving goals, as you said, they may be busy at work, communicating with them to understand that that's actually what's going on and that they're not struggling and need additional assistance. Communication is key, Christina, as we all know, and that's what our organization's about. Moving on to membership with recruiting, also did a great job with recruiting. As you mentioned, about 50% new members. The club recruited 9 new members last year. What are you doing in general to attract guests to your meeting and then connecting with those guests and having prospective members, how are you inviting them to the meeting and then just getting them to become members of the club?
Well, of course, this is always the challenging thing, right, with a lot of clubs. The tough part is for us attracting individuals within a corporate club. There's always that attrition of roles and positions within the organization. People will leave the company for other opportunities. We've had our share of layoffs over the last few years, and people would leave the position, or they were considered a contractor. Their term was only for a year or two, and then they're gone as well. Those things all have happened in the last few years. And that was the toughest part about trying to recruit people. It's because a lot of things here too have like the ebb and flows of projects, right? So sometimes they're busier than others. We have relied on the networking of our members. We have relied on the ERG, so the Employee Resource Group, that is a huge thing within Johnson & Johnson and all campus. We try to outreach within those organizations. We have Microsoft had Yammer, now it's called Viva Engage, but that Yammer, it was more of like a blogging profile. You can post announcements. A lot of the ERGs got together and would tag events or information randomly on each other's posts. So we try to use each other's communities to really outreach. And since we went hybrid, it was also much easier because most of the people, they don't have to be actually on site here at the facility or have this campus be their primary on-site location. So that has definitely expanded us. Also, we try to do an open house every year. This last one was our first hybrid one, which was a little interesting of how to kind of transition people being on site, transition people remotely from the virtual sense, but it went well. And honestly, we were able to gain 2 new individuals, 2 new members from it, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, if I just attracted one that became a member, I was already going to be excited. So it takes a little bit. Fortunately, we have those avenues. We don't advertise, obviously, outside of our organization because we're a corporate club. So the only thing we can do is kind of using the various terms of communication that we have. We have emails that would go out as a post for our campus wide. We put something up there if we have an event coming up, or during like February, March, people are starting to work on their goals and objectives for years. It's standard company time. At that time, we would say, hey, if you need something to add to professional development, this is your chance. Join Toastmasters. All of us who have joined Toastmasters include it as a professional development goal within our company's performance reviews. So it's one of those things that the more we can engage everybody internally, keeping our name out there is already key. And going hybrid, of course, opened that up a little bit more. But otherwise, we're just not going to block emails out to everybody all the time. We try to use different ways and in different times, so that way we're not, just taking advantage of it all.
Christina, you mentioned the ERGs, and this is really important within a corporate environment, a great resource to be utilizing. Was it the tool you said it was an Engage, Microsoft Engage that you were using? I didn't quite.
So the site, and I'm not even sure if it's called a blog or what is it called, but the communication channel that it was called up until very recently, Microsoft Yammer is what it was called. And honestly, I think all of us are still going to call it Yammer forever. But it was recently Microsoft rebranded it, named it to called Viva Engage. But it's just, that's a mouthful. But yeah, it's that Yammer profile that different groups, different communities can create like channels within. And in those channels, you can make a posting, you can share files, and you have a membership, like they have to join that group. So it's almost, think of like Facebook, right? You have special pages in sites, and some of them are private, so they require you to click on the join button. And that is our channel of what we consider our public view. So there's a Toastmasters in Motion Yammer page, but we also have a J&J Toastmasters page that encompasses like all of our campuses across the US. So it definitely opened up that window, but that has been very useful for us, post-pandemic years of the real outreach to just get our name out. And as far as an ERG, so each campus, it's up to them how they want to budget their ERGs. I am very excited that this year was the first year that Toastmasters in Motion is technically an ERG in our campus. So we were allocated like budget money as a regular ERG, and then included in various, events and outreaches, where before we had to kind of beg our way in, but now we're included in the grouping and the communication. So that has been very helpful.
The Yammer or Microsoft version of Facebook, great point there. You may be in a corporation thinking, well, the community clubs, they can advertise for new members on social media. We don't have anything like that. Check in your company to see if ERGs or your Toastmaster club has access to that. And then, as Christina said, communicate with those ERGs, set up channels, and collaborate with the ERGs. Before moving on, I did have one last question. You mentioned that the first hybrid open house you had was interesting. Is there any tips you can give on holding a hybrid open house?
So I wish I can say we had lessons learned, but I'm sure we'll go through it again. A lot of it was technology based. When we were trying to project the room from the screen, so we had a PowerPoint, but we were physically in the room in one of our conference rooms here. There had a screen behind me, but the voice first wasn't going through, because the voice, I wanted to make sure that if someone came up, we put a podium up the first time in years. And if somebody came up to transition the meeting, when we were transitioning to somebody that was only virtual, for some odd reason, our sound was going off. Or when someone in the room was going to do table topics, they felt like they needed to do it from their seat, not remembering that need to come up. And it, because we're so used to doing it in face in person. So it was interesting because the people virtually didn't have really that we're so used to now, but this closeness visually. Where at the meeting room, the audio visual immediately panned to the person in the front of the room. So you kind of lost that, real close visual of that person speaking, their facial expressions, their gestures. So that part was a little awkward, and, we'll have to figure that out as we have time for the next one for next year.
With all of hybrid meetings or virtual, it is a learning process. We've done it for several years, and there's still things to learn about it, but successful open house nonetheless with recruiting 2 members. The last thing I just want to mention, Christina mentioned performance reviews. If you're a corporation, send out to managers, send out to employees, your performance review is coming up. How is Toastmasters going to help you impress your boss during that performance review? Is it something you can pitch to him saying, I'm part of Toastmasters now, that is on my performance review, I'm going to become better at leadership and speaking skills? Christina, retention of members is very important as well. You've done a great job recruiting. You mentioned open houses, collaborating with ERGs, and bringing those guests in and having them become members. But you said before, there's layoffs in companies, people have work obligations. What efforts does the club make to retain members? Obviously, there's some things that you can't prevent, but if you could state any specific examples on member retention, that would be really helpful to the audience.
A lot of it pertains to having a connection with that person outside of the meeting, when certain individuals have similar positions, but in most part, a lot of us as members, we don't have any need to communicate with each other because our it's within companies within, we're so large, so we have companies within companies with companies. Even though we're all on site in the same building, we're working different schedules, we're working different locations sometimes, and then we work different jobs. So we would not need to communicate with each other otherwise. What we like is that when we have our members, we end up, realizing, I think I ran into that person, going to the cafeteria. I saw that person online during like a webinar that we were all on. And you just get those little partnerships together and it's almost like, I feel like the buddy system. It's like, it's very different than a mentor, right? It's a buddy saying, hey, you know what? You guys like really get along. Can you just check in with that person? And you haven't seen them in a while. Then they find out they've been, having a launch or a project coming up pretty soon, and they haven't been able to meet with us. But at least we have, and luckily we're not that huge as far as membership wise that, our officers can't touch base with people. And again, that's usually fed through the officers, and we'll just kind of split the list down and say, hey, we haven't seen X, Y, and Z. Can so-and-so follow up with them? And then someone else would take another grouping of individuals. And most of the time, it's just a Teams chat. Hey, checking in, what's going on? You guys, you've been busy, haven't seen you in a while. Or some of them like, oh, I've seen you every week, but I haven't seen you like sign up for a speech in a long time. And just kind of keeping a tab on those individuals, making sure that we saw them. We know that they're there, and we feel the miss of them. We don't start seeing them come around again.
The thing I like that you said about that, Christina, is a police system. Reaching out, following up, as we all know, is important, but we don't want the members to feel like it's somebody's job to reach out to them and ask them to come back to the meetings just because we want to retain membership. Having that connection as more of a buddy and reaching out and talking about what they're maybe doing outside of the meeting, do they have other obligations, as a friend instead of an officer who needs them to come back so we retain members. I think that is a really good subtle point that you made when you called this more of a buddy system. Let's move on now to meeting planning. You mentioned in the beginning that was an aspect of the club that you felt was a strength. Can you tell us about your best practices for filling those meeting roles ahead of the meeting time? Who's in charge of the agenda? How do members sign up for roles, etc.?
Sure. So I think we have a pretty good process down pat now. We have a SharePoint that is just for our members. And in there we have various documentation. And one of them is what we call like our meeting role tracker. The assignment of who a Toastmaster for that meeting is done by our secretary. And it's done ahead of time, at least like a quarter ahead or a month ahead. So that way those individuals can really plan and figure out, hey, you know what, I'm off this week. I can't be a Toastmaster then. But we try to go through it, and we definitely allow about 4 or 5 months for someone to be a member before we can tag them as a Toastmaster. So it's not a surprise for those individuals. The goal is during every meeting, the last thing we do at the meeting is we actually most of the time pull the screen up to share our screen, and it's that spreadsheet for the meeting roles. So it lists who the Toastmaster is, it lists a potential theme if it's already been picked. But this spreadsheet is accessible to all our members, and at any time they can sign up for a speech, to be an evaluator, in case there's specific roles they need to fulfill based on their pathways projects. But also at that meeting, at the end of a meeting, we'll bring up that screen and pretty much we'll say, hey, you're Toastmaster next week, just to confirm, you're good, right? Yes or no. And then we'll say, okay, so-and-so signed up for a speech, or we only have one person that signed up for a speech. We have a chance for a second. Does anybody want to do a speech? But like I have, for example, the middle of October, I already put myself for a speech. So I can plan it that way, as part of our schedule. We found that being extremely helpful because originally, years ago, we say, okay, this week, next week, who wants to be a speaker? And people will be like, I'm not sure if I have time, or that way, if they plan ahead, they know when they're going to be around, they know what's before and after. They're able to schedule that better. And that's how we'll fill all the roles. We'll just pretty much go down the line. It's about 3 minutes of the end of our call. And it's part of our agenda that we're planning the next meeting. And we just say, who would like to take timer? Who would like to take GE? And typically if a new guest, a new member decides to say, hey, you know what? We actually had it this week. Someone said, hey, I haven't done evaluator. Can I be an evaluator? We're like, great. But after the meeting, I took like an action item just on my own, and I followed up with them and shared, here's the meeting, here's the role information for evaluator. Gave them a link to the Toastmasters International site where they can have resources and videos. And that way, just they had something to back up with. We always tell them, if you're new to this role, just take a chance and try it, but also reach out to us. We can review what's required for each role. So we've done that successfully for a while now. It's worked great because that way people know that they're in for a role. They get to plan a little bit of it. Typically at the end of a week, so now we're on Wednesday, our meetings are Tuesdays. Toward the end of the week, Thursday or Friday, we would typically have the Toastmaster who just completed the week. So they fulfilled the Toastmasters duty on that Tuesday. Whoever was Toastmaster, say it was Betty on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, she'll send out just a quick email to our membership and say, a reminder, these X roles need to be filled. So say we need a timer and we need, a second evaluator. Just send an email to our membership. On the Monday, what we typically like to do is we'll send out an email. The Toastmaster of tomorrow's meeting, so the Toastmaster of that new week, they would then follow up on that, communication saying, hey, we have meeting roles filled. They'll send out a communication saying, oh, by the way, these other meeting roles are filled by X, Y, and Z. We'll list the individuals. More of a reminder and tag them in the email. More of a reminder to say, hey, remember you signed up for this role. And also, again, filling up any details or positions that need to be filled. And also, that typically is when the theme would be announced if it wasn't predetermined. We typically allow the table topics master or thought of the day or the Toastmaster of that week. Typically, they kind of have dibs on picking the theme, and we always have a theme every week. A lot of times it's extremely random. And creates a lot of interesting table topic sessions for sure. And that's how we roll with our meetings. So we're very specific in that Tuesday mornings of our meetings, we will send out a PDF of the final agenda to all our members through the meeting invite. So that way everybody's updated of what's going to happen during the meeting. So, and that's how we flow, and it usually flows very well. I can tell you there are definitely times that a lot of us had to play, double duty and doing 2 roles. There's been times that someone can be GE and the timer cannot attend, so they'll just do timer as well. I mean, it happens to all of us. But typically, we're pretty well versed of knowing who's filling what role and what the process is.
Christina, thanks for sharing that process. There is a lot to unpack here. Go back in this video and listen to these steps. What I heard here was putting an agenda item on the Toastmaster agenda for that meeting to fill the next meeting roles, having the Toastmaster of the week follow up with members at the end of the week, transition to the new Toastmaster for an additional follow-up, and confirming, which is really important, that the members who did sign up are in fact going to take those roles. Multiple touch points, part of the process, and then that follow-up again as well. And it sounds like much success in filling those agendas. For anyone who's struggling with agenda, this was a lesson and a process on how to get that agenda filled. Thanks for sharing that, Christina. I want to talk briefly about your executive meetings. We talked about planning of regular meetings. How are they held? What's usually discussed? And how do you track action items in your executive meetings?
So our executive meeting, as mentioned previously, I like to give an agenda 24 hours in advance, and I send it out to the officers as a heads up of, hey, these are the topics I want to cover. Most of the time it's because it's an action item that's past due or coming up. It will be like an event coming up potentially that we want to follow up on, and also a check-in on the DCP of where we are with certain pieces of it. During the meeting, we typically would have the secretary share that agenda on the screen and we run down it. Sometimes it's kind of out of order, of course, but ultimately we try to touch point on all the options. If someone can't attend, they would typically give me their feedback ahead of time, which is why I send out the agenda at the time. But if that always doesn't work, or they have to attend last minute, wasn't predetermined, they can follow up afterwards. But typically the secretary will be doing the notes while we're on the screen, all seeing the screen, so we're all sharing the same information. And following up to that meeting, those minutes are sent out, and it's actually a like a OneNote that we share where all our minutes are. So any of the officers can go back to view the other ones in case they need to reference something. But it's, and that's where kind of like our action item comes from, and we just try to keep up with it as far as that communication. So if there's something mid that we can't wait until the next officer meeting the next month, we'll just send communications out. Again, we have the email, we have the Teams group, and so those, those options allow us that constant touch points, with our officers.
So checking on that DCP, as we mentioned at the very beginning, high club performance, presidents distinguish, each executive meeting, making sure that that DCP are working towards getting additional points in there. And then also you mentioned the OneNote notebook, having a digital notebook where everyone can access. It's not a physical asset at that point, it's a digital asset that everyone has access to. And following up midterm, don't always need to get leadership activities done in the executive meeting, especially if they're very timely, to follow up on the chat channel or email, as you said, Christina. All forms of communication, coordinating, and being a strong leadership team. Awards and recognition. Are you recognizing members' achievements in club meetings? And if you are you giving physical or digital awards? And then how often do you recognize member achievements?
So for us, for the Pathways Education Program, we have a process that the first Tuesday of every month, in lieu of thought of the day, we replaced it with education award. And our VP of E in the last few years has just gathered up who's completed a level. He'll prepare a little digital certificate. We'll show it during the meeting, right in between that time, before we start the meeting kickoff. And again, in lieu of thought of the day, we'll take that moment from the agenda and he'll just do a quick shout out, hey, this person, even if they're not on, we'll just do this person's earned this level or a path itself. And we'll show that digital certificate, and of course send it off to the individuals directly. We will post it on our Yammer. We'll post it on our SharePoint. So we try to post it everywhere we can, just to kind of keep tooting the horn of that person and what they've succeeded. Another part, though, of recognition is we started this quite a few years ago. And initially it was physical, like you can tangibly touch this, but we call it our Weekly Star Award. So someone had in our membership an actual star that's like just like a trophy you would get, as playing t-ball or something when you're young. And it says Star of the Week. And we've initiated that then, and we kept it virtually. So at the end of every meeting, right before we do the meeting role assignments, we will say, okay, the general evaluator bring up the next person and say, okay, this is the previous Star Award recipient. That recipient picked someone else on today's call for just something that we thought they were a star for. So whether it's somebody that finally did their icebreaker, or someone, did a really awesome table topics as table topics master, or a table topics reply a speech, or the general evaluator did like a really awesome job that day. For anything at that moment that person's, we always have the prior Star Award recipient announce it to the next one. If that person is not present, we'll just default it to the general evaluator to present it to someone. And hopefully, especially when we try to do it with guests, it hopefully allows that guest to say, well, I think I really need to attend next week, right? Because we want to make sure that that person is just, not disappearing on us. So we'll kind of follow up with them saying, hey, remember, it's your turn now to pick somebody, trying to get them back again. So that Star Award, when we've gone to district conferences, et cetera, we mention it, people are like, wow, I never thought about that. We actually even created a virtual background that's the Star Award recipient, but trying to get people to remember to use that as their background for that other meeting it's been almost impossible, but it's there if someone remembers it.
Getting members to come back, or guests, as you said, to come back with that weekly Star Award, that was something I hadn't thought of either. It's not only recognizing, but a reason to continue to come to meetings as well. That is a great tip for everyone that you've already talked to and said, I never thought of that. Now, Christina has given us that idea to incorporate in our meetings as well, to recognize and bring members back. Christina, we're coming up on time, but I did want to talk to you a little about corporate clubs. You mentioned particular aspects of corporate clubs that not all community clubs have to deal with. One of the things that is always of interest to me in general is the focus of Toastmasters on the corporate membership and their corporate goals. So do you find that members join the club to improve skills directly applicable to their work?
I think for the most part, yes, or at least has been our trend. We have individuals that really just want to progress in very specific aspects of their career. There's somebody that could be, a 20-year employee that's really great at customer service. But if they're then given the opportunity to achieve a higher role and then realize, okay, now I have staff members under me and now I'm a manager and I can't do presentations to save my life. Or they'll say, I don't like talking in front of a group of people. They're like, well, you just became a manager with 12 people under you. So how is that going to work? So those are the little aspects sometimes people will come to us. And at one of our most recent members was that situation. He was like, I'm just a shy person. I don't have a problem talking to people, like on the screen, etc. But if I have to talk to people, depending what the subject is, I can stay really back in the background. And he's like, now, as my new position, I really need to be in the foreground. So those are the little skills that we find people that will join us. Not many of them come to us directly with those, but that's when if somebody wants to become a coach instead of a mentor to help someone with a specific skill set, we can try to match up someone as a coach, or even someone that's not even a member that we might say, hey, you know what, that manager in that other group was really good at that. And, even though they're not a Toastmaster member, they can really help guide you, in what you're doing and just create a relationship with them so that, we can try to outreach as much as possible, but also try to see if they can stay within, what their reason for joining Toastmasters was.
I was thinking of speaking and presentations in particular. You went off in a completely different direction, which was a fantastic point you made for leadership inside the company. Toastmasters, we're a leadership organization as well. Members coming, you mentioned possibly coaching on a particular aspect, joining Toastmasters because of that to further company goals. Christina, we're at the point where we have to conclude after all of those great tips and processes that you gave us. I'd like to ask you before we end our interview today, Why should somebody come to your club meetings? And are there any concluding thoughts that you want to give to Toastmasters in general?
I would say, for our meetings, because we were really deep in the tradition, even though now hybrid, we're a good club even just to visit as a guest from another club. I think it gives a good example of what a Toastmaster club should look like, how we approach our agenda, how we take our meeting rules seriously. But we're really a casual group. We're, funny with each other. We create this camaraderie. A lot of us are friends now, even outside of the company. It's helped me proceed in my career. I would have not had the guts to do some of the presentations that I've done for like 200 plus people with a director right in front of me as we're trying to do a hybrid meeting. I would have not had that. And I've been asked to co-lead various committees and groups just because they know my name. They know who I am. And I was just within an analyst role. And most of the people I was with all were in management and I wasn't. So it's the matter of, having that ability of trying to use the Toastmasters program to what you want to get out of it. You're only going to get out of it, right, what you put into it. But try to get in touch with someone that is seasoned, that you see their name often, and just reach out to them. We're very fortunate. We're actually, our former district director, Audrey Cushion, she came from our club. So we started, Audrey was a big member of ours, and before she retired, even though now she has a different job and altogether. But, it's having those constant communications with people that you can say, well, you know what, I think that person in district or division or area, maybe there's a name that you see often, like, you know what, I think I've seen that person doing the class. Maybe I'll reach out to them. So lean on your fellow members, even outside of your club, to give you that good viewpoint, but also remember that there's other options. So for us, is my final suggestion, is we realized our manufacturing and plant associates, they don't have the flexibility or luxury to attend a weekly meeting. They have very specific shifts, very specific schedules. But we know that there's a need out there. So we're actually going to bring the Speechcraft program hopefully to them this year. And that way, they're given the proper time to do professional development. And hopefully that can move them around to different positions and just give them that little boost of confidence and leadership that they need. So kind of think outside of the box sometimes. And remember, Toastmasters has other programs that can really help us outreach to, to different groups.
Christina, thanks for that. If somebody does want to join one of your club meetings, you said they are every Tuesday, right? And they're hybrid?
Every Tuesday at noon Eastern time, and they are hybrid. So if it's something that they're interested in joining, I believe my contact information will be there. Just reach out to me, and you'll be able to. I'll be able to send you a meeting invite to join us.
Thank you for that, Christina. And you mentioned Audrey, and I have to show my shirt. District 31 rocks. This is Audrey's shirt right here. Audrey being part of your club. I'd like to just conclude what I heard for the audience from the interview today. Toastmasters in motion. If you're a corporate club, just like they are, they gave a lot of good examples on how to recruit members, utilize your ERGs, utilize your management performance reviews. Let them know that Toastmasters can help them with all of the areas of their career. Organization, we heard that over and over again. Filling those meeting roles, making sure that you follow up and confirm that people are going to be in those meeting roles so you have well-organized meetings. And then the biggest message I got today was you will not be forgotten with Toastmasters in motion. The follow-up process, checking in with members, making sure people are not struggling with pathways, making sure they're meeting their goals. And when you follow up, being a buddy, not being somebody that just wants you to come to the club. It's a statistic, very personal touch that Toastmasters in motion has. Christina, thank you so much again for joining me today, providing everyone with this fantastic information. And I wish you and Toastmasters in Motion the best Toastmasters year ever coming up.